Ready?
Evening, folks. Thanks for coming to attend the meeting. Would you all join us and rise and pledge to the allegiance? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the Board of Supervisors meeting for January 16th, 2009, I believe. 19. It says 18. So I'll open by offering the opportunity for public comments on the agenda items as presented. Yes, sir.
Shucraft Road. You had mentioned at the last meeting that you were going to give us a report on meeting with the folks from Delphi Pipe Company. You said you had told me that yourself.
Yeah.
You were going to meet with them. I'm surprised to not see that on the agenda.
Yeah, and Greg, it was set up originally, Greg was a communicator with them, and he has been a week and a half attempting to get them to respond. And we had a meeting with them back in late December, early January, and they said that they would meet with us sometime before the middle of January. The meeting we had with them, from my perspective, and I think the other members of the committee would agree, was not very informative. We learned a number of things. One most significant in my mind is in the process of discussing this, because we were supposed to be discussing fire protection, emergency, so forth. And we did not spend much time on that. We did talk a little bit about it. However, we generated into other questions, and I asked them, do they have any other stations? And he said, no. I said, have you ever built one? And the answer was no. So with that, it created more of alert than we've probably had in the past. We've been getting all kind of propaganda pieces, little bits and pieces from them, and some from FERC, but we still don't have a good definition of what this is. We've been trying to get to some of the other stations that do exist, and I think there are I think there's over 1,000 of them in the U.S., and we've not been successful in accomplishing that. Talked about it, tried to plan something, and it has not worked. So it's still quite secretive. We have been discussing and try to look at developing an ordinance. We haven't legally developed how that could be effective and affect this particular activity. They have been pretty adamant in kind of casual words that they're not going to comply with our ordinances. And that's an issue we have to deal with legally.
Well, can there be a legal challenge to this? Isn't that
there can.
The job of this
There can.
council?
And we have to assess what all that involves. Yes, Jay?
To answer the question specifically, can there be a legal challenge? As we've said at many meetings, we've attained party status. We get copies of all the documents. We provide feedback frequently. At the end of the day, we don't make the decision, and we don't have the ability to appeal the decision unless we can show that they have violated a federal regulation. And at this point, not complying with our ordinances is not a requirement of the federal regulations. If it was a state,
challenged. I mean, that doesn't make any sense at all to me.
I'm sorry, what?
That doesn't. Why can't that alone be challenged? That we have no ability to challenge. I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me. You say that we have no right to challenge that they can overtake our ordinances. I can't believe that there can't be a way to legally challenge this in some way.
You asked a whole lot of questions in there, and so I'm hesitating because I'm trying to decide which one to answer. And do we want to? This is not public comment on a confirmed appointment. Do you want to continue with this now, or do you want to wait till later in the meeting? It's up to you.
I think we should wait, but believe me, we understand everybody's concern. And I urge everybody, take a pen and pencil and write to the governor, write to the representatives.
Well, I've
We're-
talked, I have.
Yeah, okay, everybody has, not everybody has joined in on your program.
There's nothing more effective in a situation like this than communication from state and federal elected officials. When the state is doing a project, the law states that they have to follow our ordinances. When the federal government is doing a project, they are the sovereign and they do not follow our local ordinances. I don't know what to tell you other than that, but as we said, this is probably more appropriate under public comment at the end of the meeting, not on agenda items.
Okay, well, I apologize. I thought that there was an agenda item from the last meeting.
There's
where
not.
this was discussed.
Can I have your name again, sir?
Cliff Cole.
Thank you.
I can assure you, it's very frustrating. We have some very good qualified and technical people in this small committee, and they're, I think, equally justified in not being able to get any indication. We've asked them time and time again for plans. What does this thing look like? And in the process of discussion, I asked them, what's the cost of this plan? How much is it gonna cost you to build it? And you're gonna build it on 1.5 acres. Oh, in there lies things that don't agree. They said $200 million. Now, whether that's not accurate or not, but that's what they said. And there are people in this room who could confirm that, who were in that meeting. We had fire company members, we had our committee, Greg was there, and we had an 1.5 hour meeting, and actually, from my perspective, we didn't get anywhere. Well, we did, we learned it. They've never had one before, never ran one before. And that's a very scary picture to me. And so it's like giving your 12-year-old son the keys to the car. Yes, ma'am.
My name's Pamela West. Who's holding them accountable for the off-gassing of the methane and the noise levels that they have said they're gonna be within certain levels on both of those counts? And who's gonna be monitoring them? And how's that gonna be, how are they gonna be held accountable if they go over those?
Thank you for your
prescribed
questions,
limits?
and they're the same questions we're asking them, and we're not getting any answers. Now, they keep saying they're gonna have a meeting with us, and I don't know if you're any new in the last couple of days, Greg.
Those were some of the questions I asked in the public meeting that we had down at the elementary school, and actually that
Yes.
got incorporated into the letter that we sent to DEP,
Yeah.
was it?
To DEP, yes.
Yeah.
So we haven't heard anything back on that matter yet. So we have asked those questions, but we're not getting answers.
So isn't there obscurity a legal problem?
Well, my perspective on it is that they're hiding under the umbrella of FERC. And FERC is part of the federal government. Part of the federal government is the utilization of the resources that Pennsylvania has in the form of natural gas. And when it all comes down to it, it's about money and control and power. And they will not admit it, but it's my view that that pipeline and that kind of investment is going further than Philadelphia to supply a couple of companies. It's headed for Europe, in my opinion, because they're going to use that as a counter to the issues they're having with Germany and the oil pipeline that Russia's pumping into Germany. They won't admit that. That's a different subject at a different level, but that's my view as a tie-in. I've been in all those places, so I've seen them work. It's very frustrating. Most frustrating thing is we don't have any answers to give you. We don't have any answers ourselves. We have some little bits and pieces, but they are programmed to divert. And I would say, would you agree, Greg, that that's what we had at that meeting, a diversion?
I would say it was very uninformative.
Same thing. Yes, sir. Oh. So unfortunately, we continue the battle, and we think maybe we're going to be lucky enough and get a meeting scheduled with them. The people that we met with they were nice people, very enjoyable and good conversation, but they're not relating any details. They did get a young engineer, I say that because of the sound of his voice, and they talked a little bit about some of the pieces, and he's the one that knew what the approximate cost of the station was. They didn't have any idea, and they're supposed to be the representatives of this company to the public. They will talk to anybody individually. They will not talk to a group in public. What DEP did, they did the front work, DEP at that meeting. And in fact, I heard feedback that the day of the meeting, DEP called and wanted to cancel it. So that's where we are. Long story, but hang with us. We're fighting for it.
We live a mile from the site, and we never got any notice from Adelphi or anything that this was going on.
I had one last comment. I had a brief conversation with Brian Fitzpatrick, and he's working on put together a meeting to come to this area and have a discussion on this subject. Because he and Craig Stats have both written letters together, one letter, denying and urging it to be replaced and located someplace else. And,
We'll keep going.
yes. We don't know the timing. It's sometime between now and the end of January and early February. So, okay, we need to move on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Announcements, we will have an executive session following this evening's meeting on some real estate and personnel matters. Under the consent agenda, they're all listed on the program. Does anyone have any specific questions about those items, the board or others?
I do not.
I do not either.
Okay,
Make a motion for approval?
A second.
motion made and been seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Comprehensive plan. This evening, we're going to present the comprehensive plan, which has been created over the last year and a half by a group of 5 people and 1 resident, and working with the people in Bucks County Planning Commission. And Mike Rodick, who some of you may remember, he worked with us on the initial one we did back in 2005.
2005, yeah.
And so I'm going to turn it over to Mike, and I think he's going to give you an overview of it. We will, because it was scheduled earlier and we had to delay it into 2019, we're probably going to put it out for advertiser and then final approval in February.
Okay. All right, great. Yeah, so I'm going to hand out a draft to just sort of pass around. It's going to say 2018 on it. Obviously, the draft came out in 2018, but now that we're in 2019, it's going to be the 2019 comprehensive plan. I'm just going to pass this around. Anybody wants to take a quick look at it. If you want further details on the comprehensive plan, you want to really read into it, it is available on the township website. You can peruse it at your leisure there. Please take a look, and hopefully you get a little bit better idea of what the township has planned for the coming years. Judy, can you move the slide?
Do you want to work this yourself, Mike?
So I guess the first question we want to ask ourselves is, what is a comprehensive plan? A comprehensive plan is a municipality's main policy document that details the collective vision for the future, the historic, environmental, cultural resources, cultural facilities it seeks to protect, and the steps necessary to achieve this vision. Comprehensive plans aid officials in land use planning and decision making. As Don had mentioned, back in 2005, the township did a comprehensive plan. This is intended as an update to that comprehensive plan. The municipality's planning code requires municipalities to update their Comprehensive plans every 10 years, and so this update of the comprehensive plan is designed to make sure that they're in keeping, the township's in keeping with that MPC requirement. Do you need to move the next one? So one of the most important things about a comprehensive plan is establishing a community vision. That vision is designed to set out a future ideal for the township to achieve in terms of what it wants to see the township look like in the future, and sort of the overall policies, the overall policy direction that we would like to go into. The community vision that we established was based on the information, the background information collected in the comprehensive plan, the discussion of the comprehensive plan group, and the results of the survey that we sent out to every family in the township. So this community vision is generally divided amongst those plan elements that you would see in the comprehensive plan. So we have our natural resource vision, our agriculture vision, housing, non-residential development and economic characteristics, community facilities and services. Judy, you can go to the next slide. Parks and recreation, farmland and open space, historical and cultural resources, transportation and circulation, water and sewer, future land use and growth management. Really, that's kind of like the critical chapter, that sort of ideal or that vision for land use that the township would like to achieve in the future. And then we also have a sustainability element. So those are the elements of the comprehensive plan and that collective vision. So I just talked about the survey a little bit. One of the most important parts of this comprehensive plan was that survey was sent out to every single family in West Rock Hill Township. We sent out 2,100 surveys, over 750 were completed and returned. That's a very good return rate. The survey included multiple choice questions, rating scale questions, and also allowed space for public comments or comments. The purpose of the questions was to gauge the general feelings about the township and its future. Yeah, Judy. This is just sort of two of the questions that we asked in the survey, and I specifically wanted to focus in on that question number 3, where you live in the township. What we thought it might be interesting to do is sort of divide the township into 3 different areas, and obviously collect our survey questions from those 3 different areas, and to see if there was any differences amongst the opinions of people who live in various areas of the township. And what we found was generally people agreed on almost all the questions. There really was no variation in the way they answered questions depending upon where they lived in the township. So we found that to be pretty interesting. This is just sort of an example of one of the questions that was asked in that survey. It asked what characteristics of West Rock Hill are most important to protect. And as you can imagine, most people chose answers like scenic beauty, low crime, and public safety. Also, small town character and low taxes. So I can imagine all of you are sitting there thinking, yeah, those are generally the way I would have answered that question as well. All right, community background. One of the things a comprehensive plan tries to do is collect information about the community that the plan is trying to develop a future vision for. So it's real important that you look at things like demographics, you look at the natural resources, housing, non-residential development or in economic development, transportation, infrastructure issues. You want to look at all those background issues, and you want to develop a plan for those different elements. And that also helps you get that sort of overall vision for how you see your community developing in the future. All right, Judy. So one of the first chapters that we have in the plan is on demographics. Generally, it paints a picture of an older working class community. The township's population and housing totals reflects its status as a rural community. If you look at, this is just sort of a comparison between West Rockville Township and Bucks County. You look at the median age, this is all back in, this is from the 2010 census. The median age for West Rockville Township is 47 and a half years old, whereas for Bucks County as a whole, it's 43 years. Looking at average household size, 2.38 people per household versus 2.63. Median household income, $66,000 for yearly household income versus $79,000. And then for bachelor's degree, you look at among people among residents who are 25 years and older, the percentage of people who earn a bachelor's degree or higher, 26.5% versus 38% for Bucks County as a whole. So these are three statistics that you can just sort of look at this township profile and say, yeah, that generally points the picture, or paints a picture, I should say, of an older community that is probably a little bit more working class, because generally, older folks, have their children have left their house, so you're going to have lower, so they're going to be older, they're going to bring up that median age, it's going to be a smaller household, and their income isn't going to be as high. Another plan element is land use. Land use is just basically the use for which, what land is used for. This is a map that you're going to see in the comprehensive plan. It's sort of, you can see sort of that patchwork there. I know it's kind of hard to see with all those various colors, but you can see where development is generally concentrated, sort of in that south portion of the township, where you see those sort of reds and purples down there along State Road. And you can also see smaller parcels down there. So our reds and purples, our reds are commercial land use, our purple is industrial land use, our yellows are single-family residential land use. Green is parks and recreation, as you might imagine. That light purple is vacant land, and blue is government institutional land use. So it just gives you sort of a general picture of how land is used in the township. Another important plan element is natural resources. This plan identifies the various natural resources that are in the township. This particular map shows the watersheds of the township. There are three main watersheds: Unami Creek to Hicken Creek, and the East Branch Perkiomen watersheds. These are our three main watersheds. So generally, what a watershed is most of you probably know, is how water drains through an area. And these are certainly important planning units when it comes to looking at the natural resources of any community. The chapter also looks at things like woodlands and steep slopes. It looks at floodplains. It looks at streams. It looks at topography and geology. All those basic natural resource units that make up the natural resources of West Rockville Township. The chapter also talks a lot about the various ordinances that protect these natural resources in the township, and looks at issues like invasive species as well. Historic and scenic resources. Historic and scenic resources are really important to the identity of West Rockville Township. You can see a number of readily identifiable historic resources. I think that's one of the twin churches up there. That's the Camp Hill Meeting House, or Highland Park. That's it, Highland Park historic resource. And I think that right below that is the Zimba property, I believe, with the historic home there. So the township has a number of historic resources that are really important to its identity. A number of years ago, actually it wasn't too long ago, maybe back in 2010, I want to say, the Heritage Conservancy conducted historic resource survey of the township, and they found over 285 historic resources that were of value in the township. And among those resources, I think they found over, I want to say like 56 or something like that, of those resources were what they call a priority number one resource, most deserving of protection. And some of those resources they felt were eligible for preservation on the National Register, or listing on the National Register. Another important resource, the identity of West Rock Hill Township, is open space and agricultural resources. This map here shows all the various types of preserved properties in West Rock Hill Township. I know it's kind of difficult to read, but some of these resources are parks, some are preserved farmland, some are state game lands, some I think are Act 319 properties, and some are like ag security areas. But it shows you the wealth and diversity of open space and park and recreational resources that the township has. And it's something obviously that residents do value. Okay. This is a trail and greenway plan that came out of the 2010 Park and Recreation and Trails plan. This is really, I think, conceptual at this point, but I think this is something that the township is really looking to implement in future years. The county, I know, has a number of initiatives to develop trails throughout Bucks County, connecting various municipalities, and other municipalities have engaged in their own trail development program. And I think that I know that the township would like to start to implement this particular program to connect those many open space resources that we just talked about through trails, through off-road or on-road connections, and through greenways. And this would allow people to take advantage of those open space resources that are throughout the township, and also provide them with an opportunity for recreation, an opportunity to make those connections without actually having or walking along those connections or biking along those connections without having to be on the road. Transportation and circulation, another really important plan element. Transportation transportation infrastructure is vitally important for the ability for people to get to jobs, to get to housing, and for the movement of goods and services. It has a big effect on the environment, has a big effect on the economy, and it has a big effect on people's quality of life. So this is a chapter. We had a number of recommendations to improve that circulation, improve that movement of people and the movement of goods. But at the same time, we want to protect that rural character that residents so value in West Rock Hill Township. All right, future land use and implementation. Okay, Judy. So a future land use is really what your land use policy is for the coming years. It's how you see the township or your community developing and growing. We had three basic land use categories. There in the green are areas that we want to protect. Those areas out that are away from infrastructure, areas along the East Branch, Perkiomen Creek. We want to protect these areas. These are our critical resource areas. So we want to encourage uses that are more in keeping with that rural environment, open space uses, low density residential development. Areas in brown are areas where we have infrastructure, and we kind of see the township growing and developing, providing for higher density residential uses, providing for commercial development, industrial development, providing those job opportunities, those economic opportunities. And that blue area, is our rural holding area. This is areas that could potentially, the township could potentially expand that infrastructure into in the coming years, should there be a need for it. And that's just kind of we call it a rural holding area. It's should that growth explode in the township, that's the areas that we want to concentrate development. Right now, I don't think, given recent population trends, I can't anticipate that, just because growth has been generally pretty low here in the township and in Bucks County in general. But at the same time, the township wants to show that they are planning for this to make sure that they are in keeping with applicable case law. Okay, go ahead. All right, so back in 2005, we we had a number of recommendations to improve the township's growth management and improve the I should say, not improve the growth management, to address its growth management issues and address some of the issues that were outstanding with the existing plans and ordinances that it had. So we laid out a number of recommendations, and we took, the township in the intervening years has taken actions to improve or to update those ordinances and plans. So since 2005, the township has developed a new zoning ordinance, a new subdivision and land development ordinance, new Act 537 plan, that's your sewage facilities plan, an on-lot disposal system management program, a new stormwater management ordinance, a park and recreation and open space plan. There's been over 2,000 acres of preserved open space that the township has achieved. They also developed a village master plan for Almont, which was not adopted, but still contains a number of recommendations that we think are still could be implemented here in the village. And then also, there was also a historic resources survey report. So we kind of want to, we were so successful with that last comprehensive plan, we kind of thought, well, why break something that, why try to fix something that isn't broke? So we decided to do something similar to what we did in that original comprehensive plan, and that's come up with a list of plan actions. So in the beginning of the comprehensive plan, we have a plan summary, which just basically just really briefly summarizes the contents of the comprehensive plan, but also includes a list of activities that are most critical to the plan's success. So each of the activities is summarized and is listed with a general timeline and completion for completion and whether or not the activity has been completed or implemented. And in this checklist, we kind of see as a really important tool to make sure that the things that we put forward in this comprehensive plan are actually implemented in the coming years. So literally, you can just take that, you make a copy of that checklist right out of the comprehensive plan, and you can go right down the checklist. What do we want to do next? What do we want to do next? And you can check off your progress. It's terribly simple, but it was really successful in that last comprehensive plan because I know Judy had literally checked off every activity that was put in that 2005 comprehensive plan. Even if we have an activity that said that we engage in and it's decided that maybe the time isn't right or maybe this isn't the right activity for us to engage in, you learn something from that and at least you followed up on it. And that can inform the way you want to do things in your next comprehensive plan. All right, so these are just a few of our actions for future success for this 2019 comprehensive plan. These are listed right there in that plan summary. You can take a look at that summary either in the plan I'm handing around or when you get home and you want to take a look at the draft plan. We want to work with farmers to preserve priority farms through the Bucks County Ag Preservation Program or Conservation Easement Program. Form a Trails Committee to work with the Park and Recreation Committee and the Conservation Committee to refine the trail and greenway network map, provide steps towards constructing a township trail system, establish a regular farmers market, reevaluate village zoning ordinance provisions to ensure standards will produce desired outcomes for the village, Consider the development of design guidelines that describe and illustrate design approaches that, to provide the type of development the community is looking for in village areas. Review township ordinances for impediments to the construction of dwellings that would cater to seniors. Amend the zoning ordinance to address short-term rentals. Reevaluate the zoning requirements of the planned industrial and planned commercial districts to re-incentivize industrial and commercial uses in development. Assess the best use of the catch basin property for the benefit of township residents. Nominate eligible properties, including the North Penn Railroad and Clymer Avenue Bridge in the Ridge Valley District, for listing on the National Register of Historic Places. And consider non-regulatory historic preservation approaches that would provide homeowners with incentives to preserve their properties, including historic marker programs, tax and fee incentives, and access to funding and technical assistance. And then reevaluate transportation recommendations in the Almont Village Master Plan, develop a water quality and quantity baseline study for this township. Consider a scenic viewshed overlay district, preserve important scenic views within the township. Continue and implement the township's conservation strategy, preserving 30% of the township's area. So those are the highlights from that list of plan actions. I think they really cover the diversity of the recommendations that are in this comprehensive plan. And hopefully maybe when I'm standing here 10 years from now, that we can say that yes, we went to implement each and every one of those recommendations, and that the township continued its success in developing its land use vision for West Rock Hill. So, do we have any questions from the board or the audience?
I think you did a pretty good job, Mike.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
I attended the meeting you had with the planning commission, so
Yeah.
it all synced up.
Yeah, it's good. That's good. Well,
That was
I mean,
good, yeah, thank you.
We have a lot of very committed people
Yeah.
here in the township. They work very hard, and they provide very thoughtful ideas and recommendations, and we try to incorporate all those good ideas into this plan.
Very nice.
So,
Is this plan publicly available?
yeah, there's a draft on the website.
If you go under announcements, you'll have to go to the second page of announcements, because we have a long list of announcements. But it's on the second page.
Thank you, Mike, and once again, Bucks County did a good job with us, and we appreciate that. I'd like to take a moment to identify those who were on this committee. Myself was on it, Chris Durstein, the chair of the Planning Commission, John Swardick, representing the community in general, Bob Strobel from Park and Rec, and Alex Omer, also in the Planning Commission, and three of them have good, strong technical backgrounds and understanding of what's going on, because they're dealing out in that environmental world. So I'd like to thank them for that. I figured out we put in like something, I don't know, a couple hundred hours of work to accomplish what we did. And the real benefit out of it is that we had, I think, 24 items on the 2005 plan, which the biggest one was redoing our ordinances. And they were all accomplished in about 2.5, 3 years. And that's the benefit of doing this, planning direction for the community. One of the reasons that this community stays rural is when I came on the board, there was a subject open space. Well, it really didn't have the direction it seemed to need. And I went around and talked to a lot of people in the community. And the most word I got back was, we want to maintain the open space. We want to keep the rural look. And we started a big stroke in that, in the fact that we got together an aggressive conservation program. And our goal, the strategy which I wrote, was 33% of the acreage of the community. And we have roughly 10,300 acres. So far, we've conserved key large pieces to the amount of roughly 2,000 acres. And what that does to control retaining the open space is it prevents contractors or come in to the community, pick out these big spots and fill with houses or townhouses, whatever it be. That's the way you got to keep it open. and rural. And if you don't do that, you're gonna have what you see in Summer Hill Town and closer into the city. So, and this community is very uniquely formed in the trees and the rocks and the rills and hills and creeks and so forth that provides the opportunity to do what we've done so far. And there's still a lot more to do. Mike didn't mention, but at the beginning, we did a survey to all the homes and properties here in the township. And I think there were, 2,100 of those, Mike, is the number I
The
remember.
2,100, yeah.
And I think we've got 700 or 800 responses. And that survey complete survey is located and charted and analyzed in the back of this comprehensive plan. So some of the input some of you may put in, you can see how it impacted or affected the direction of this plan, because that's the base where we start. And so, Chris, would you stand? Did you guys stand? Chris, I don't know, Alex here,
John's
John?
John,
Bob.
Bob Strobel. Thank you all. A lot of efforts, a lot of discussion, a lot of debates, a lot of disagreements, but it all worked out into a really good plan.
Thank you all for
So
your time.
thank you all. Great job again. Now we got to get it done. And that's our job.
Do we need to make a motion to advertise?
Correct.
Also entertained.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
And I'll second.
Okay.
Motion second will be entertained for adoption at the February Board of Directors meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all for tolerating and listening and maybe created some interest. I guess, Greg, you would offer if somebody wants to come visit and sit here and read it here, they can do that.
Yes, it will be available here at the
Yeah,
counter,
so
too.
you can sit and page through it and so forth. Your property might even be in there, who knows? Okay, confirmed appointments. We have one confirmed appointment tonight. It's David Collingwood. And I'm going to ask for confirmed appointments to come to the front of the room so that here we can clearly hear what
Don, you
the
can
words
clearly hear
are.
me from back here.
Beg pardon?
I'm gonna tell you something, you can clearly hear me from back here, better than if I stood up there, because when I stand up there and face you, no one back here is gonna hear me. And my first question is,
Well,
everyone
I guess I'd ask why you disagree with the forum that we create.
I would like this, what I'm gonna say tonight, I'd like this to be documented in the recorded meeting minutes. My name is David Collingwood, I live at 14 Barn Road in Sellersville. Good evening.
Can everybody hear that?
At the
Yes.
December 2018 Board of Supervisors meeting, a confirmed appointment participant mentioned lack of funds for the James House when discussing the high cost to the taxpayers for supervisors' health care and dental insurance. At that meeting, a lot of misinformation was generated by some members of the board, and I want to publicly correct some facts based on information I obtained through right-to-know requests. The old farmhouse across the street, now referred to as the James House, was renovated at taxpayers' expense to become a temporary police station. This included handicap-compliant upgrades to the interior and exterior of the building. The building was vacated in 2011 and has remained empty, unheated, and generally falling into a state of disrepair ever since, 8 years and counting. The basement filled with water, about 6 feet, due to improper monitoring of the sump pump, destroying the heating system. Mold was identified throughout the house, since mitigated, at least temporarily, at taxpayers' expense. Structural integrity and possible termite infestation have also been questioned. Taxpayers' dollars, $9,980, were used in 2016 to hire a contractor to trench around the building for a drainage system. And tax dollars were again used in 2016 for masons to repair a crumbling foundation at a cost of $1,035. Since 2011, I have personally written 4 letters to the township in an attempt to negotiate an agreement between the Board of Supervisors and the West Rock Hill Historical Society. We have met individually with each supervisor and have had countless meetings with the township manager. We even requested a meeting with the township solicitor, which was never honored. For years, the Historical Society has offered unlimited unlimited volunteer sweat equity worth thousands of dollars and financial support to rehabilitate the interior and exterior of the entire building, including paint, carpet, tile, a security system, and assuming responsibility for heating and electrical costs. Finally, in March of 2017, almost 2 years ago, we were handed a lease agreement which stipulated that the Historical Society could lease the building for $1 per year, with the township bearing full responsibility for the building and all the major mechanical systems such as high-vac, septic, sand mound, electrical, plumbing, and roof. And the township would pay for the purchase and installation of a new furnace. The Historical Society's general membership overwhelmingly approved this written lease agreement. Later in 2017, when mold was discovered in the building, repeated attempts by the township to mitigate the mold at taxpayers' expense by a professional company were eventually successful at another taxpayer's cost of $6,000. In 2018, the Board of Supervisors informed the Historical Society verbally, via the township manager, that they would not honor the written lease agreement originally proposed in 2016. They have now instead offered a verbal take it or leave it proposal that requires the Historical Society to assume full responsibility for all mechanical systems and pay for a new furnace plus the cost of installation. All this expected from a nonprofit organization for a building the Historical Society doesn't even own. The repeated rationale of this Board of Supervisors is that they have no money and will not spend another dime on the James House. All the while, the building continues to deteriorate. After spending $17,000 taxpayers' money and through negligence destroying a perfectly good heating system, this board in essence wants the Historical Society to bail them out. As a citizen who has paid taxes into the township coffers for 32 years, my question this evening to the board is, what plans do you have to financially maintain the James House, save it and the thousands of tax dollars already spent, or demolish it?
Well, we could spend a lot of time talking about that, but
Before you go there, I think Greg and I would both contest a number of elements in that timeline.
Yeah.
I'm going to say,
And
Tell me
I,
what they are. I'd like to hear what they are.
okay, I'm just looking, I bring my computer so I can remote access my computer at work. And the first, my file shows that there was never an agreement reached with the Historical Society on the lease of the James Farm because, and this goes to June of 2017, because the single most difficult issue was defining what structural improvements are and what would happen if a structural improvement was so very expensive that it did not make sense for the board to repair or make that structural improvement. However, when I go back, that was not the first round of lease negotiations with the Historical Society. I go back to 2013 for the first draft of the leases between the township and Historical Society. Greg, I don't know if your recollection's different than that, but that's what my file is showing.
I don't know the timeframes of it.
Well, the timeframes, that I don't think we can argue with the timeframes because it's, I have a draft of the lease on 10/4/13, a draft of the lease on 10/16, a draft of the lease on 12/30, a draft of the lease on 2/14, and then there was a pause, and then we go to the 2017 leases, and there's several drafts then, I would say 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 or 15 different drafts during the negotiations between the board and the Historical Society.
Yeah, and furthermore, the township has repaired the roof just recently with roof damage. So you have put even more money into the James House for it.
I'd like to respond to that. The copy of the lease I have right here, lease agreement, states, lease agreement made this blank day of March 2017 by and between West Rock Hill Township, class township, second class township, and the West Rock Hill Historical Society. This is the lease that the manager gave to us, and we took this to our membership to vote whether we would accept this lease. And this was overwhelmingly approved by the general membership. And the date of this is March 2017. It's the last thing we've ever been given.
Well, I don't know how to address what you've been given or what you haven't been given, but I have the draft dated March 30th, 2017, but I also have a draft dated May 3rd, 2017, May 11th, 2017, May 23rd, 2017, and June 22nd, 2017, which...
You may be correct, but we never saw that. You had other issues?
I don't remember everything you said, but I just...
Well, if it comes down to dollars and cents, I have all the printouts here
Well, and
from accounts that when something was paid for, like the excavation, Serve Pro for the mitigation of the mold, for the masons, I have all that information.
right, maybe that's what it is. Maybe there was a meeting, and I'm guessing, a meeting of mine in March, and then the mold was discovered, and then we started looking at it again. But you had mentioned that, like, allowing the heating system to fall into disrepair. And I just wanted to note that when Mrs. James went into the nursing home prior to her death, I went into the house and into all the outbuildings on the property. And all of the furnishings and things that she kept and there were several outbuildings, if I recall correctly, and they had broken windows. All of the furnishings in those outbuildings were in excellent, pristine condition. And all the furniture inside the house was not. It was, it had mold or things like that, and I won't go into it, but I think Sanford Alderfer, you remember Sanford Alderfer, the auctioneer?
I know it.
He went with us because he was looking at doing a sale of the property, and he said, and it surprised me, that if you keep the house heated when nobody's in it, then you're going to destroy the contents because of the humidity level. He said it's not surprising at all that the things that were outside in the outbuildings, even with broken windows, did better because they didn't have the humidity issues.
He's an auctioneer. That's a layman's. What I'm saying is this building over here has a central air and central heating system, and it was put in for the police station. We should take care of the mold.
Oh, I wasn't talking
I
about
went
mold.
into
It
the
wasn't, mildew is probably a better word for
Okay,
it.
but listen, I went into the house, got the key from Greg, I went into the house, opened the basement door, and the only thing I could see was the top step, because the basement has 6 feet of water in it. And the reason that happened is because no one over there monitored the sump pump to see if it was working, or if it had failed, which it did, and it didn't have a battery backup. A house with 6 feet of water in it, standing in the middle of winter, of course, what do you think's gonna happen? It's gonna get mold. So they have refused to replace the heating system, and now they're trying to put it on the Historical Society. We don't have a lease, we haven't signed a lease. I have no idea what the plans are. I have asked the question, what are your how do you financially plan to maintain the house?
David, you know as well as I do, that's a major project. A lot of money.
8 years, $17,000.
Well, let me
I'm talking
interrupt.
about that type of project.
Let me interject there for a minute, because that $17,000 that was spent over, David, was for you in the assumption you were gonna take the house. Yes, it was. And I've had several meetings with you and some companies on regarding helping you. We still don't have a letter of intent. We don't have a letter of what you plan to do with the building.
We have nothing from the township offering us
And therefore, that's why we are where we are.
We
The
have
township
nothing
has
from the
spent
township.
money for the Historical Society. You are stating here publicly that the township has not reached out to help you. All of that money that was spent across the street was for the intent of the Historical Society to take that house. And by the way, that money was not budgeted. We took that money out of reserves. These two seated supervisors will verify that, because there's no debate on that issue. This was done, and all of these improvements were done for the Historical Society, who have drug your feet for over 6 years.
Absolutely not.
Now, what I say we should do is give you a time frame of 60 days or 90 days and come up with a plan, present it to the township. If you decide that you want to take the house, then we move forward. If not, we look to move forward from the township's
My
perspective.
question tonight is, how do you plan to financially maintain that house? This has nothing to do with the Historical Society. How do you plan to financially maintain that house? Are you gonna protect the taxpayers' investment, or are you just gonna demolish the house?
We don't know that right now, until you make your decision.
We have nothing to make a decision on. We haven't been made no offer from the township in writing.
Haven't we been told that they made a decision?
We've
Well,
had,
How many
they-
times?
we've had
How many
input.
times? It depends on who you talk to.
We made a decision on the 2016 lease.
Without getting into that, I think it's probably disingenuous to say the township, you said you just put a roof on it.
We fixed the back roof.
You
And
fixed-
when the basement flooded, it was because the pipes froze during the wintertime and there was no natural drain. The sump pump kept running, but the pipe was frozen to keep it out. And so then it filled up to the thing. We then installed a natural drain so that the water could go out. So if the sump pump fails, there's a natural drain to take the water away. So that issue has been corrected.
Bottom line, we created the Historical Society, and I'm sure Eleanor Gruber's turning in her grave at this point with what's going on. We created that. It was part of this organization. We funded it. We supported it. They use these facilities, still store equipment in these facilities. And the agreement was, initially, the thought was, we'll take it, we'll fix it up. So to do that, to get money, they requested the township to allow them to become a private entity, which we agreed with them to do. And the purpose of that was so that they could go out and raise larger sums of money to be able to do what they wanted to do with the James House. That hasn't happened. They've had things, they've raised a little bit of money, but it takes a lot of money. And David, you more than anybody ought to know what kind of money it takes to fix up an old house like that. This township cannot afford to fix that up totally. It's not fair to the employees or the residents. The only way that would ever happen, if the residents say they're going to be willing to fund money to support it. I mean, what else is there to do? Do these people want us to give you the money to fix it up? Have you ever told us what you're going to do to fix it up? No, we've never seen a plan. We've had 3 or 4 members up here who volunteered. When you get started, we're going to help you.
Don.
We've gone around this for 11 years, David.
Take over a house that we don't own and be responsible for all the major mechanical systems. I don't care if you say it's $1 a year. Not when we're putting thousands of dollars of sweat equity in the place. And we have not seen anything in writing from the township. And Jay, I disagree with you. I don't care what you say about the changes or repairs you made over there. You're hiding behind that skirt. That was never done for us.
It was.
No, it
Fact.
wasn't, because we never had an agreement with you.
But you had stated you were going to take the house, and we've still been waiting for
Yes.
the survey, or
We
for the
wanted
vote.
the house where you be responsible for all the major systems.
I will point out something to the public here, so that everybody can understand. We entered into a 99-year lease, previous boards, with the